Hey everybody, welcome to the EXOcast. Today we are going to update y'all on some breaking news. Today Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine has now demanded full EU membership for Ukraine. The embattled leader hit out after Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz suggested associate status for the frontline state. This was an article by The Telegraph by Robert White that was posted today. The next thing we have is in terms of China-European Union relations. This is about the economy, the Chinese economy. And this comes from the South China Morning Post by Xiaofei Xu. As its firms look overseas, China overtakes U.S. to become the top foreign investor in Germany. Deteriorating transatlantic relationship and high energy and labor costs are making American firms think twice before moving into the German market. And so China overtook the U.S. to become Germany's top single country source of foreign direct investment last year, a German government report said. That's our second article. The third article we have is that Zimbabwe just drew a hard line for foreign miners concerning its gold. This is written by Chinedu Okafor by Business Insider Africa. And says that Zimbabwe is stepping up its campaign for resource-driven industrialization by prohibiting foreign individuals and firms from participating in small-scale gold mining, the latest move in a larger strategy to boost local ownership and promote the domestic material and mineral industry. Zimbabwe has banned foreign individuals and companies from participating in small-scale gold mining to promote local ownership and to empower citizens. Foreign players must significantly increase their investment or exit the sector by January, according to this new policy. The restrictions apply to mining entities producing less than 20 kilograms per month and with capital under 15 million. Zimbabwe has also accelerated its ban on raw lithium concentrate exports, now requiring domestic processing before exports are allowed. This once again comes from Business Insider Africa. The next thing we have is an ex-post by the Sahel Revolutionary Soldier. Apparently, Burkina Faso moved to reclaim mining wealth with a new state-backed sovereign investment fund. In a bold push for greater economic sovereignty, the government of Burkina Faso has officially established a new sovereign mining investment fund aimed at channeling mineral revenues into long-term national development. The Council of Ministers adopted a decree on Thursday creating the Fonds Souverain Minier d'Investissement du Burkina Faso, sounds very French, the FSMIB, named Sinian Sigui. The fund is designed to capture surplus revenues from the country's booming mining sector, particularly gold, and to redirect them towards strategic infrastructure, industrial projects, and even economic transformation. The key objectives of the Sinian Sigui Fund is to convert excess mining revenues above a set reference price into productive investments, finance major infrastructure and industrial projects starting in 2027 to strengthen state control over the nation's national and natural resources, support broader goals of economic independence and development under the current transitional government. And this move comes as Burkina Faso continues aggressive mining sector reforms, including increased state participation in gold mines, nationalization of certain assets, and record gold production of 94 tons in 2025. The country is positioning itself as one of Africa's rising gold powerhouses. Analysts see the fund as a significant step in resource nationalism, similar to strategies used by other resource-rich nations to move beyond raw commodity exports toward value creation and long-term wealth building. So more details are expected in the coming days as the government will outline the fund's governing structure, contribution mechanisms, and initial investment priorities. And so this is a developing story. This was written, once again, by Sahel Revolutionary Soldier on X. Our next article is that Indonesia is to exempt nickel pig iron and some palm oil derivatives from centralized export policy. This was written by Reuters through its AI. Indonesia, specifically Jakarta, will exempt nickel pig iron, which makes up the majority of its nickel exports, and some refined palm oil products from its planned centralization of commodity exports, a senior government minister said. Under a policy announced this week, exports of coal, palm oil, and ferroalloys, that is, iron alloys, must go through a state company with a transition phase expected to start from June 1st. The resource-rich nation is the world's top exporter of thermal coal, palm oil, and nickel products. Nickel pig iron, a low-purity nickel metal, will be exempted from the policy, while ferronickel was included due to its iron content. Chief Economic Minister Erlangga Hartarto told reporters late on Thursday after a meeting with some industry groups. Ferronickel has a higher content of nickel than NPI, but both products fall under the same code used in global trade tracking. Indonesia's exports under this category totaled $16.4 billion last year, Statistics Bureau data showed. The industry says NPI accounts for the vast majority of nickel metal exports. This means it will be fine, but we must see the technical implementations later. A person in the palm oil industry who attended the meeting said exports of crude palm oil, or CPO, refined, bleached, deodorized, or RBD palm oil, and RBD palm olein will go through the new agency, while their derivative products will be exempted. The products included in the centralized export plan represent around 90% of the palm oil exports last year. Statistics Bureau data showed. Last year, Indonesia exported 23.6 million metric tons of crude palm oil, and its refined products worth $24.4 billion. Okay. Our next article is from The Guardian. Apparently, the Czech president urged NATO to show its teeth over Russia's provocations. The former general Peter Pavel says Moscow's testing of the alliance's eastern flank should be met with a firm line. The Czech president, Peter Pavel, has urged NATO to show its teeth in response to Russia's repeated testing of the alliance's resolve on its eastern flank, suggesting a range of options, including switching off its internet, cutting off its banks from global financial systems, and shooting down jets that violate Allied airspace. Speaking to The Guardian in Prague, Pavel called for decisive enough, potentially even asymmetric responses to counter Moscow's provocative behavior against the alliance or risk the Kremlin intensifying its actions. A retired general and former chair of the NATO Military Committee, the 64-year-old's defense background is rare among European leaders. His years of experience talking to Moscow on the suspended NATO-Russia Council have made him an influential voice on the future of the alliance and the threats it faces. He expressed frustration with a lack of determination to keep pushing from the United States on Russia, although he steered clear of direct criticism of Donald Trump despite the U.S. president continuing to cast doubt on the future of Washington's commitments to the alliance. He focused instead on the need to push NATO members to take a firm line on Russia after its illegal annexation of Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. He said Moscow had learned how NATO operated and developed a behavior style to almost meet the threshold for Article 5, but always keeping it slightly below that level. And if you don't know, Article 5 of the NATO Treaty states that an armed attack against one neighbor is considered an attack against all members. So this would, in fact, start a World War III scenario, especially from the European front, if America was involved in NATO during this time frame. Pavel said Russian military leaders laughed at times at the alliance's decision-making paralysis, he says, when I asked them why do they do these provocative actions in the air, close encounters or overflights over battleships in the Black Sea or the Baltic Sea, their answer was because we can. That's exactly the kind of behavior we allowed, he said. And a NATO jet fighter shot down a drone over Estonia this week, and similar incidents have disrupted everyday life in Latvia and Lithuania. In most cases, the drones are believed to be Ukrainian units targeting Russia that were jammed and redirected towards NATO territory by electronic warfare. We talked about that too. Russia is also accusing the Baltic states of working with Ukraine to launch drone attacks from their territories, an allegation they strongly deny. Okay, so we're seeing kind of this information warfare that's going on. And once again, there's more to this story. However, I'm going to move on due to the length of the video. And once again, this was by The Guardian. And this was written by Jacob Krupa and Sean Walker in Prague, if you want the source for that. The next article we have is once again from Business Insider Africa. This was written by Solomon Ekonem. It says Africa's top bauxite hub attracts a $1 billion alumina plant from China's largest state-owned producer. Guinea's ambitions to move beyond raw mineral exports received a major boost after Aluminum Corps of China, or Chalco, China's largest state-owned aluminum producer, agreed to invest $1 billion in a new alumina refinery in the West African country. Chalco, China's largest state-owned aluminum producer, has agreed to invest $1 billion in building a new alumina refinery in Guinea. Guinea's government will initially receive a 5% stake in the project with the option to increase it up to 35%. This will be Chalco's first alumina refinery outside China, leveraging over a decade of experience from its Bafa bauxite mine in Guinea. Africa holds 29% of global bauxite reserves, but less than 1% of the refining capacity. Okay. And the Beijing-based company said it will establish a new entity to develop a 1.2 million ton per year alumina plant in Guinea, which is going to deepen China's growing footprint in Africa's bauxite-rich economies. So we are seeing a Chinese push into African resources now, although that has been an ongoing strength of theirs to obtain these critical minerals as they go through. Our next article is going to be by U.S. Naval Institute News by Heather Mongilio. She stated that Russian crude exports are increasing as the Strait of Hormuz transit remains low. Russia is expanding its oil business while the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is still slow, analysts said this week. Moscow's crude oil exports have increased since March as the U.S. waived some sanctions on Russian crude and floating storage until June. Lloyd's List editor-in-chief Richard Meade said Thursday during a weekly webinar. Russia exported an average of 3.7 million barrels per day of crude and condensates in March and April, Meade said. The price of Russian Urals crude is also drastically up to 67% from March 18th to May 17th compared to the same period last year. The crude is exported via the Black Sea. China and India are the biggest importers of Russian crude, according to Lloyd's List. Transit in the Strait of Hormuz increased to 54 between May 11th to 17th compared to 25 between May 4th to 10th. This week, there were at least 13 transits between May 11th and Wednesday, with at least 4 transits linked to China. Countries like China, Japan, and India appear to have negotiated with Iran for limited transits, Meade said. Transits are also heavily done by fraudulently flagged vessels, with an estimated 1 in 6 transits made by a fraudulently flagged ship. Timer Rainen, a maritime risk analyst with Lloyd's List Intelligence, said during the webinar, fraudulent flags are one method sanctioned ships use to avoid detection. Lloyd's List Intelligence counted 513 fraudulently flagged vessels actively trading around the world, with 92 of them in the Middle East, according to the webinar slides. This includes ships like MV Tiffany, which was seized by the U.S. on April 20th. Marines with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit boarded MT Celestial Sea, an Iranian-flagged tanker, Wednesday in the Gulf of Oman. U.S. CENTCOM forces released the vessel after a search and directed the tanker's crew to change its direction, according to a CENTCOM post on social media site X. According to CENTCOM, 97 ships, now 100, have been redirected since the blockade went into effect on April 13th, according to a Friday X post. But the U.S. and Iran argue often via social media about the U.S. blockade's effectiveness. Iran said 26 vessels transited between Tuesday and Wednesday under the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, the PGSA, the Iranian body now in charge of its Tehran toll booth. While Lloyd's data does not show 26 vessels transiting, it could be mostly smaller ships under 10,000 DWT, which Lloyd's does not include in its transit data, Meade said. So once again, we are seeing Russia actually getting bolstered economic reserves from this conflict, and they are not stopping. They are just rediversifying their asset locations and geographic contexts. So we like to talk about pizza on this channel. We like to cause a little stir in the community here. Pentagon pizza being classified and all. Um, but today by NBC News, or a couple of days ago, actually, May 22nd, this was posted by NBC News. They said that a looming ban on the additive potassium bromate may soon force thousands of pizzerias and bagel shops across New York to tweak their long-time recipes. Okay, and so if you don't know, potassium bromate is very carcinogenic. And it just reminds me of the show Fringe when uh, Walter, the doctor, is going through a store and he looks at Pop Tarts and he says, "Potassium bromate." Anyways, we are going to continue into our next news. This is by Reuters. Once again, probably by their AI system. They said that falling drone debris caused a fire at the oil terminal in Russia's Novorossiysk. And so the summary for this is that drone debris caused the fire at Novorossiysk oil terminal, injuring two. Russian officials reported additional drone attacks on industrial sites in Perm and Ryazan regions. Ukraine has intensified drone strikes on Russian oil facilities, targeting industry revenue. And so that is our main points here for this article. The general headquarters of southern Krasnodar region said in a post on Telegram that several technical and administrative buildings had caught fire. Debris had also fallen on the facility's oil storage terminal, it said. Okay, so two were injured at this Black Sea port. And so we will move on from that. We are now going to look at earth.com. They have an article by Adrian Villegas, I guess. And it's talking about this common weed killer that is linked to the development of superbugs in hospitals. Glyphosate is not an antibiotic. It targets plants, not bacteria. For years, that distinction was taken as an assurance. Herbicides might contaminate soils, but they weren't part of what was driving the crisis in hospital wards. A study from Argentina has now challenged that assurance. Bacteria from a wetland reserve that had never been sprayed turned out to be toughened against the weed killer. Their profiles matched a group that doctors know well, the drug-resistant pathogens in intensive care. The driver in question is glyphosate, the active ingredient in the world's most widely used weed killer. Argentina alone runs through roughly 36,000 tons of it a year. Most of it is sprayed across the fields of soybean plants that have been engineered to survive the chemical. Very interesting that we have that trade dynamic with China. Researchers led by Daniela Cintron, PhD, a microbiologist at the University of Buenos Aires, UBA, wanted to know if all that herbicide was quietly training soil bacteria to survive it. Furthermore, she wondered whether that training had a side effect doctors might recognize. The answer was yes, in a way that ties farms and clinics more tightly together than ever expected. The team collected 68 bacterial strains from sediment in a protected wetland north of Buenos Aires in a region called the Parana Delta. Herbicides have never been used at the site, but the farmland around it gets sprayed heavily during the soybean season. The bacteria pulled from the sediment belonged to more than a dozen different groups. None of them had been deliberately exposed to glyphosate before. Every strain showed at least some tolerance to the herbicide. Some Enterobacter strains, some Enterobacter strains, a family of bacteria common in soil, water, and hospital infections alike, kept growing even at doses many times higher than any field application would deliver. Alongside the wetland samples, the team examined bacteria pulled from local hospital infections, strains that resist multiple drugs at once. Drug-resistant bacteria kill an estimated 1.1 to 1.4 million people worldwide each year, according to one report. Most belong to species notorious in intensive care wards, including the bacteria behind drug-resistant pneumonia and the Staphylococcus strain, known as MRSA. Each strain was then tested against 16 common antibiotics. The hospital bacteria laughed off many of the drugs they faced. Nearly three-quarters resisted carbapenems, the broad-spectrum antibiotics reserved for times when nothing else works, the closest thing medicine has to a last line of defense. Then came the surprise. Every single hospital strain also survived high doses of glyphosate, well above what crops in the field actually receive. And so When the researchers built a family tree of all 102 strains together, a pattern jumped out. The wetland bacteria most able to tolerate glyphosate were close relatives of the antibiotic-resistant bacteria from hospitals. They came from the same bacterial families and had similar genetic makeup, only the home addresses were different. Enterobacter strains were among the toughest in both settings. That clustering with tough wetland bugs sitting on the same branches as tough hospital bugs is what makes the connection more than a coincidence. Earlier work assumed that bacteria resist glyphosate mostly by tweaking the enzyme the herbicide is designed to attack. Reading the bacteria's genetic code told a different story. The bigger driver seemed to be tiny pumps inside the bacteria that flush toxins out of their cells and a cluster of genes that break glyphosate down. Those same pumps are also used to expel antibiotics, which could explain why glyphosate-resistant bacteria and drug-resistant bacteria end up looking so similar. Other research has shown glyphosate exposure can speed how quickly bacteria swap drug-resistant genes with each other, further broadening the spread. Until this study, no one had drawn a direct genetic line between specific hospital superbugs and resistance to a particular agricultural chemical. The Argentine team has now drawn that line using the DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, of both sets of bacteria. For regulators, the suggestion is concrete: test pesticides to see whether they breed antibiotic resistance as a side effect before approval, and label products that can carry the trait through soil and water. On the hospital side, sewage treatment becomes part of a fighting drug resistance, not a side concern. Drug-resistant infections have long been treated as a clinical fight. This paper puts a piece of that fight squarely in the runoff. There is a few other little fields here that I did not mention, but this once again is by Adrian Villelas from earth.com. Interesting that is going on in the scientific community. The New York Times, unfortunately I have a paywall here, but the New York Times has an article recently written that is saying or stating that the White House approves $9 billion for spy agencies to catch up on artificial intelligence. The CIA and NSA cannot fully deploy the latest models on their classified systems because of a shortage of cutting-edge chips. Yeah, so I'm not able to get past this paywall. Probably if I had an ad blocker or something, I might be able to. Yes, we will continue. On X, we have an article by United 24 Media. The Swedish defense minister said that Ukraine should have the right to join NATO, arguing that its military experience and technological innovation would strengthen the alliance. He highlighted the scale of Ukraine's battlefield innovation and defense production capacity as unmatched in Europe. That is all we have on that. And finally, this one might be the most important one. There are attacks on Ebola centers which intensified in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo amid the outbreak fears. Anger and mistrust growing over Ebola burials as traditions clash with medical response to prevent spread. This was written by Al Jazeera by Prosper Harry Ngorora. He wrote, Goma, Democratic Republic of the Congo, that attacks on Ebola health facilities are intensifying in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, as the World Health Organization warns the outbreak could worsen in the DRC and Uganda. On Thursday, the Rwampara Health Center was stormed by a group of angry residents demanding the bodies of relatives who had died from Ebola, according to local sources. The incident was also confirmed by partners of the Congolese government involved in the response in the area. A day later, a tent provided by Doctors Without Borders, also known by its acronym MSF, at a hospital in Mongboalu in Ituri province was set on fire. Following the death of a patient showing symptoms of Ebola virus disease in one of the tents, healthcare staff isolated the body in line with strict health protocols. The NGO Alliance for International Medical Action, ALIMA, said in a statement sent to Al Jazeera. It is said that while the body was being prepared for burial, tensions flared, resulting in the burning of 2 tents. Despite this incident, the teams were also able to secure the body of the deceased patient in preparation for a dignified and safe burial in accordance with Ebola response standards, Alima added. Health workers in Ebola-hit areas of the eastern DRC have repeatedly faced resistance from communities over strict burial protocols, which require specialized handling of bodies to prevent further transmission of the virus. Aid agencies said the tensions are often driven by fear, rumors, and mistrust of medical teams. Some people here believe that Ebola is a business, said Gloria Idris, a resident of Rwampara, who also witnessed the scene. When healthcare providers refuse to hand over the bodies of those who have died from Ebola, people think they might be trafficking their organs. The Congolese health minister has said the bodies of Ebola victims remain highly contagious and must be handled only by trained teams in protective gear. Let us bury the deceased safely, Roderick Kamba told Radio France Internationale. The dead must not take others with them into the grave. In the eastern DRC, it is customary for relatives and neighbors to gather at the home of the deceased to pay their last respects, and some mourners touch the body as a final act of farewell. As of Saturday, nearly 180 people had died from the disease, and close to 800 cases had been recorded, according to the Congolese Ministry of Public Health. Authorities in Ituri have introduced measures to try to slow the transmission, including limits on public gatherings, suspension of wake services, and a ban on moving bodies between locations. Rodriguez Casando, a doctor specializing in health and the environment, said violence targeting Ebola treatment facilities is being driven by rumors and misinformation. She wrote, when an epidemic breaks out, rumors spread quickly. If accurate information is not shared fast, people will believe anything, and that is when violence takes hold, he told Al Jazeera. All right. And so authorities in Ituri and North Kivu are urging residents to wash their hands regularly, keep their distance from the sick, cook food thoroughly, avoid self-medication, and trust response teams. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has placed 10 African countries on high alert. South Sudan, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and the Republic of Congo, Burundi, Angola, the Central African Republic, and Zambia. The DRC, Uganda, and South Sudan have agreed to strengthen cross-border coordination, including surveillance, early warning systems, border monitoring, and improved laboratory and response capacity. Once again, the most easy way to transmit Ebola is through contamination, feces or urine, for example. If you touch it or you touch someone else's, you're more likely to contract the virus through skin means and contact in that way. So they are right to say to make sure you wash your hands very thoroughly. It may not protect you entirely from the disease, but it is the most likely way to get that kind of out of your system. So these are all the articles I have for you today. I'm glad I kind of wrapped it up in 30 minutes as opposed to an hour. And I will keep y'all posted with anything new that pops up through the shorts. If you guys want more news updates, please click the bell notification icon so that you are subscribed and can get all the new news updates. Thank you all so much for supporting my work, and I hope to see y'all in the next few videos. Bye for now.